Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, we're talking electricity matters today again. And, well, yes, when you talk about tariff increase, it gets the attention of everyone. Well, yes, we're focusing on that and some other matters today. We're joined now by Mr. George Itomi, who is a director with Eco Disco. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, let me start off with this part wherein now they're talking about increasing tariff. Last time out, we looked at the schedule, not the schedule, we saw a breakdown of Ikeja, Eco Disco, how the service charges are going to increase from 750 in 2015 to over 1,000 in 2018, and then looked at some other ones, Bini, Ibadan. They all have different rates, different years at different times.
Sure.
Many will always talk about the fact that, look, they don't have this electricity, and then they're increasing tariff. And then they remember it wasn't long ago when the federal government announced a reduction in these same tariffs. But now we have these notices everywhere about this increase. What's going on?
The starting point is to understand that following the privatization of the industry, that a certain guaranteed tariff structure was agreed between the government, as represented at the time by the BP, and the investors. This is, in any business, you expect a fair return on investments. So some of the assumptions that were made, for example, power would be given at, there would be as much as 7,500 megawatts. That was subsequently reduced to 5,000 megawatts. But as you all know, we're doing phenomenally less than that. It was also agreed that tariffs, there's the multi-year tariff order, which basically schedules how your tariffs will be structured over that period of time. Now remember, with the discos, as they're popularly called, the raison d'etre for their operation is to reduce the aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. The whole idea being that if you're able to reduce these losses, then you would have a greater margin of profits to deal with. Now, again, the reduction of the A, T, C, and C losses, as they call them, has now been tampered with when NEC said they were not going to recognize the collection losses as a basis for calculating tariffs. That was what sent an uproar to the entire industry. And many of them were saying this is a paradigm shift from what had been agreed. So NEC's reaction has been, yes, we recognize that your tariffs must be cost reflective. They insist that the collection part of it globally is being discouraged, so they don't see why it should be there. But then you have signed contracts. Contracts are sacrosanct, and if you don't honor the contracts you sign, you're going to have investors, send jitters amongst investors. So this is really what is playing out. But when you come back to how it hits the pocket, which is really what concerns everybody, the tariff structure is predicated on a number of factors: availability of gas, availability of consistent transportation, as in TCN, and so many other things, because that's what affects the bottom line. Because at the end of the exercise, it is what the discos have that they sell. And when they sell to you, what they receive goes towards paying a number of people up the chain. The market operator, the systems operators.
Let me jump in.
Only a part is left for them for their own operations. And it's important this is explained.
Yeah, because along the line.
Okay.
Let me add this so you could also explain it at the same time. Does that mean that if they take away the service charges and rely on what we consume, you pay for what you consume, strictly and so, will it affect the discos? It
certainly will, because it would not be a cost-reflective business at that point, because you would be struggling to meet with your basic needs. That's why. You know, it's a heavily regulated business, and what NEC is trying to do is to balance the interest of making sure these discos get a fair return for investments, and at the same time protecting the public from what you might say exploitation. That is the fine and balancing role that NEC is playing. But we must understand that we are moving, or we have moved into a privatized environment. You should ultimately work towards market forces, determining how these prices go. Let's go to our familiar telecoms. You remember when the mobile phones first came into Nigeria, even the handset, to get you paid as much as 200,000 naira for the handset. You paid as much as 200,000 naira for the line at that time. But that was just the onset. That's normal. But then the moment you freed up the space and many players came in, the sheer interplay of market forces has ensured that your SIM card, your line, your
You don't think this is different?
Crashed.
The electricity
it's not different. The principles of economics are the same everywhere.
Usually Nigerians, I like it the way you're taking it, because we have to break it down for the end user to understand all of this jargon we're trying to break. Because what the man understands out there is when you ask him or her to come pay some money, and you have to understand why you're paying that amount. That's why Chamberlain is trying to bring in the service charge. It's one of the greatest things that most Nigerians will go online and inundate you and comment on. Now, with this increase coming in, and you have just tried to relate it with the telecoms industry, let's look into it further. There must be something that the investors, the discos, are giving that the Nigerian public don't understand, for them to know that truly it will get to a point where you get it almost free. What are those things, away from gas, because which is the big hindrance that we've always had, away from gas, what are the inputs that the investors, the discos, have brought in to the extent that if there's no increase, they may be at a loss, which ultimately might discourage some of them to go out of business?
Now, when most of these contracts, in fact, when the bids went out, part of what you were required to do was to come up with what they call a CAPEX plan, where you invest $250 million over a 5-year period, in addition to the responsibility to reduce the ATC and C losses, as I mentioned. Now, to put it in perspective, this industry you're talking about was neglected for over 30 years. So most of your equipment is antiquated, whether or not you like it. You are using old age technology to service modern needs. So what is happening today is that with many of the discos investing phenomenal sums of money, it is not on the face of it showing. Remember, I think sometime we spoke about this. I likened it to somebody who's like 100 feet below the ground, sort of clawing his way back. He's at 50 feet. He's come halfway, but because it's not yet on the surface, it looks like nothing.